Portuguese pronunciation, and also verb fazer, present tense and past tense. So, welcome back. If you're new here, don't worry, this session stands on its own. And if you watched the last video, this will feel like a natural continuation of the same conversation. Today we're going to keep practicing Portuguese pronunciation, and we'll do it through the verb fazer. This way we practice something useful. In English, fazer is usually translated to do or to make. These are simple words, but they open the door to some important stress patterns we'll explore together. Ok, present tense. Eu faço, tu fazes, ele, ela, você faz. Nós fazemos, vós fazeis, eles, elas, vocês fazem. Faço, fazes, faz. Fazemos, fazeis, fazem. Now please look at the first three examples. Faço, fazes, faz. Here we place emphasis on the first syllable. This is because by default the penultimate syllable tends to be stressed in Portuguese. We learned this in the previous video session, and I will leave a link to it in the description, but let's review it to make this session independent. Stress patterns in Portuguese. So the first three forms of the verb sound like faço, fazes, faz. Now let's look at the next three. Nós fazemos, vós fazeis, eles fazem. So here's the pattern. Fazemos and fazeis have three syllables, and unless there is a graphical accent, the stress naturally falls on the penultimate syllable, the one before last. Thus, we stress z, fazemos, fazeis. As for fazem, it's disyllabic, so we stress the first syllable, fazem. Same as faço, fazes, faz. Now, let's remind ourselves of the bigger rule. In Portuguese, the natural stress usually falls on the penultimate syllable, even when a word has 4 or 5 syllables. That's the default. Of course, there are exceptions, but this is the guide to follow when you are reading or speaking in Portuguese. So, accordingly, in these examples, we emphasize ze in fazemos and fazeis and fa in fazem. I'll leave this text as a PDF file for you to practice reading later. Please check the URL in the video description for a download. Now let's practice with the past perfect of verb fazer. Eu fiz, I made, I did. Tu fizeste, fizeste. Ele, ela, você fez. I want to make a note about fez in a bit. Nós fizemos, vós fizestes. Eles, elas, vocês fizeram. Again, the default rule applies. The penultimate syllable is stressed, unless there is a graphical accent, which that's not the case. So, why does fish sounds like fish and not fash? It's just one syllable. Shouldn't it be open, fash? Well, the reason seems to be historical, but some phonological rules were also created over time to describe this phenomenon. Let's just mention the historic reason for now. The word fish comes from Latin ficit, which had a long closed e. So when ficit became fish, the closed vowel quality was preserved. It's the same e sound as in mesa and many other words. Let's look at some examples of the verb fazer while also using the stressed syllables and explain a few things more. Example 1. Eu hoje fiz uma carne de porco à alentejana. Hoje, uma carne de porco alentejana. Today I made Alentejo-style pork. So let's pause on that little a before alentejana. In Portuguese, it means in the style of. Think of the famous French phrase à la carte. Same idea. Now look at alentejana. It's a 5-syllable word, and we put the stress in já. Why? Because that's the penultimate syllable, the one before last, and there's no accent on the word. Words that naturally stress to the penultimate syllable are called paroxytones. We covered that on the last session, but you don't have to know that. You don't have to memorize that. It just serves to explain. That's the default in Portuguese. If we wanted to stress the third before last, or the very last syllable, we would need a graphical accent to tell us so. For example, it would look like alentejana, or alentejana. But those forms are incorrect, of course. They don't sound Portuguese at all. The proper stress is já, alentejana. Just for further illustration, let's compare alentejana with a word we used on the last video, matemática. In matemática, the stress falls on ma, which is the third syllable from the end, not the second from the end. And notice it has to be marked with an acute accent. Without that accent, it would sound like matematica, tica. We would put emphasis on the ti, on the t, tica, which is incorrect. The accent is what tells us exactly where the stress belongs outside of the default mode. Example 2. Elas fizeram a escola em Santarém. Elas fizeram a escola em Santarém. They attended, or made in this case, they attended school in Santarém. So here in Santarém, we used an acute accent to stress rém. Without it, it would sound as Santarém, which is incorrect, and it sounds very foreign to Portuguese ears. As for fizeram and escola, no accents are necessary. Stress falls naturally on the penultimate syllable. So, closing thoughts, let's end this session here. Short learning sessions with emphasis on repetition help us build fluency while adding new layers to the magic of Portuguese speaking. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so for notifications of new uploads. I will try my best to explain all this information. Thank you. Obrigado. Tony de Araújo.